Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raise Your Voices, Hoboken Public Library's first online writing class, free online writing class for Women's History Month. This every week we have a really fabulous lineup of people. This week's topic is daydreamers, storytellers, young women speak. Before we head over to Kira, I just want to tell you a little bit about why it is that I decided to host this particular meeting. When I was thinking about what's important to discuss, I thought to myself, young women have such a different attitude about all the different identities and so much to teach other people. So it seemed natural that to have a conversation in which they could um, rise above. And I'm turning over the panel to Kira in a moment, but I just also wanted to tell you that you can go onto our bit.ly link, bit.ly ly, bit.ly/ raise your voices plural, and you can download recordings and fact sheets and all kinds of interesting information. And if you stick around to the end, there's a free giveaway as well. So I'm just going to be turning this over to Kira with the understanding that you are welcome to join in on the conversation at any time. Okay? So over to you, Kira.
Thank you so much, Diane and Hoboken Public Library for organizing these excellent women's history events. I'm incredibly excited for the panel tonight. As Diane said, we are going to be discussing young women's perspectives with storytelling and how we go about processing our creativity and putting pen to paper or however you choose to write your stories. Tonight on the panel, we have Amanda Spence. She is a consultant at the NYC Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, where she works with small independent healthcare practices to help them better utilize their EHR systems. She is a graduate of SUNY Geneseo's BA program in International Relations, minored in anthropology, and is currently an MPH candidate at New York Medical College, pursuing her master's in health policy and management. Amanda recently worked with some of her college colleagues as well as her professor, and they developed a book together about NGO development. So I'm sure we're going to hear more about that later. We also have Tay Hussein. She is a communications expert who started her career in media, and she's now working in the humanitarian sector. She's done all sorts of writing, and I really look forward to her sharing the different topics that she's covered. She believes that having strong communications and the power of storytelling in any line of work has the power to change the world. The humanitarian org that she works with is called the Zakat Foundation of America. And I am Kira Seal. I work for NBC Universal. I'm an on-air scheduling specialist for 3 networks. I'm an avid reader. I also am currently writing a novel. And I also started a YouTube page called Words by Kira, where I talk about self-love and human connection. So now that you've met all of us, and of course, Diane Rubino is on. She is an NYU professor. She teaches communications ethics, international communications, and many other classes as well. And she's a writer. So we're going to just jump into the questions and the conversations. If you have any questions, of course, we're going to be mindful of not speaking over each other, but you can definitely join in as well. So the first question I want to begin with is, how do you prepare to write and get in the zone? How do you start? And I'm going to take this one to Tay.
Yeah, so how do I start? Usually what I do is, once I have that topic that I know that I'm going to be like covering or any of that sort, I try to research the actual topic. Or if it's actually like a person that I'm interviewing, I like to just, make sure I do my homework and either, Google the person, or if it's someone that I know, make sure, I have just a general idea what they do. And once I have that, I kind of know, I mentally prepare myself with notes on, okay, this is how I want to structure what I'm going to write. But that's how I kind of, try to get in the zone.
Totally. Thank you, Tay. That was a really good answer. You have to do your research, especially if you're going to interview someone. Because I know recently, like even on my YouTube channel, I wanted to interview somebody, but I didn't do the proper research. And then I wound up missing out on this whole angle I could have had with someone. So yeah, that's excellent advice. Diane, what about you? How do you get started when you want to write?
Oh, that's such a good question. I I overthink typically. I worry a lot, and I start just writing. And having said that, I feel like that my whole technique needs to change. And thankfully, on Raise Your Voices, our Bitly page, you can find a nice little overview of a writing structure that I will be adopting. It was from last week's resources. And that is a more planful approach that I think will be less stressful, because what I'm doing now is stressful.
Hmm. I can totally relate. It's hard writing, especially when you want it to be really good and you have a specific type of content that you're going for. It can be intimidating. Something that I try to do when I start out with my writing, I definitely try to be alone. That's number one, because people can be really distracting. And I turn off my phone. And I realize too, if I do it like earlier in the day, it's kind of better for me because I'm not just so bogged down with like all the things that I have to do later. So I really just try to like be alone, start in the morning, and that helps me get prepared too. Oh, I see Veronica says she's an overthinker too, Diane. Amanda, what about you? Whenever you want to write, how do you get started?
So I think like Taya, I do some research first, but I like to think about themes and like the story that I want to tell. So I think about the story, then I think about the themes and how I can categorize everything. And then once I kind of have like a concept map of like the idea of it, then I start going more into the details of like researching or asking people questions of what they think should be incorporated into it. But when I'm actually sitting down and writing, I like to actually be in a place where there's a lot of people. So like I'll find a coffee shop usually, and I like that buzz of energy, and then I'll just put on my headphones and I'll play some like background music to just like get me in the zone, and I'll just start like typing away, and then later on I'll go back and edit it. But yeah.
I have a
That's
question. What's a concept map?
Yeah, so a concept map is basically like you start in the center of what your topic is, and then from there you can branch off into the little themes. So you have little bubbles, and then it goes further and further and further out to kind of get you started on explaining what your main subject is and what you want to deliver. So yeah, this is just a nice visual.
It is, and that just shows how different we are because you like to be around a lot of people and have energy, and I'm like, oh no, I want to be alone and to myself.
Yeah, I'm like Kira. I like to be alone. I just like seclude myself, and that's how I actually get my writing done.
Definitely. How do you guys choose what you want to write about, especially when it's like on your own time, no boss telling you or no email, but when you say, okay, I want to write today, how do you decide what stories or topic you want to do? I guess we could go with Tay. Let's go with you again, Tay.
For me, kind of just my environment. So, if I'm out somewhere and I see something interesting or just like jogs my memory, I'll be like, oh wow, that's like inspiration that would make me want to, write about something that I just observed. Cause I people watch a lot, and that's why I can't ever write in public because I get distracted. So but that's what inspires me. Just like maybe if I had a really interesting conversation with someone, I'll go and like, maybe Google whatever I just learned, and that could spark some inspiration for my writing.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. I think for me too, like when I choose what stories, it's definitely inspiration. And like a really good tip one of my friends recently told me, she said it's really good to like carry around a notebook for those moments when maybe you get inspired. If something triggers you and you feel like, oh, that'd be a great topic to write about later, or that person seems so interesting, it's really a good tool to have so it can kind of be with you when you get inspired by something. Does anybody else want to chime in? about how they choose? Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I like the idea of adding of like bring a notebook with you. What I do is like I have my phone so you can write notes in it. So if an idea pops in my head, I'll be like, okay, let me write this idea down, or I'm feeling this way today, so let me just like write down this idea or how I feel, and then like it could be poetry or it could just be random thoughts. Um, but that's how I get into to doing writing. Yeah.
Excellent.
I sometimes use an editorial calendar. So, fortunately, I write a lot about pedagogy teaching, and there's a lot going on in the first quarter. So you have new beginnings, and then African American History Month, Women's History Month. So I definitely have things that I write to, but I'm also have in my head a series that I'm developing, and it's designed to help promote my brand, if you will, in a particular area that I want to go into next. So
So very intentional.
yeah, I mean,
Battery.
you have to.
Mhm. What sort of vehicle do you like best to share your work? Tay, let's go with Tay again. Because I know we were speaking about this before, and I really like the ones you included.
Yeah, so I mean, I usually, well, different publications. So I kind of used to write for MTV and this publication, this online publication called Brown Girl Magazine, where they, what Brown Girl Magazine is just geared towards South Asian women and, kind of telling their story, which was like a really cool platform for me to write about, for me to contribute to, because I have, so many crazy things that I talk about being brown or any stereotypes that I can think of. But yeah, like just like, putting your work out there and, basically, reaching out to these publications and just sending your work in order to get published is just a great way to really, get your writing out. I also use all my social platforms a lot. Twitter, whenever something goes up, I like to share on Twitter or Instagram or anywhere on LinkedIn, maybe just to get a couple more eyes on my work. Um, yeah, and I think just sharing on socials is a great way. And I also used to use WordPress just to blog, which I kind of would love to go back to since I haven't been doing it in a while. But WordPress is also a great platform and it's super easy to use.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I love the mix of going to different publications, but then also realizing I can self-publish in this way on my own. I can write on whatever platforms and nobody has to tell me yes or no. I decide. I think that's taking a lot of it into your own hands as well, but still being open to reaching out to different publications and sharing your work.
Mhm.
Diane, I know you mentioned a place where you can publish different writings as well, right? A website?
Well, when I'm working from an editorial calendar, I'm usually working for someone. So I work for Wiley, the academic press. So I write topics that I think are going to be of interest to them. And right now, the aforementioned intentional series that I'm working on, and it's essentially about the ethics of communication in the age of COVID. And so in my head recently, I've been ideating about like, well, what's that platform going to be? So, and I feel like I want to add so much more to my writing in podcasting or video or something new. So this is a nice little foray, a toe dip out into other mediums.
Yes. Amanda, what about you? Like when you did the book with your colleagues or any other writing? I know I've definitely seen you post really beautiful pieces on your social media as well. So, how do you feel about which mediums or different places you like to share your writing?
I think everyone kind of covered it. Taya, with finding a publisher or social media is such a great way to just get your work out there. And then Diane when you're saying, there's just with the book that or the chapter that I helped co-author, it was for open pedagogy as open course design, and we just wrote our class experience for third wheel development in undergrad, um, and we wrote what they were asking for. So, so yeah, I second everything that you guys have said.
Mhm. Thank you. So now we can also talk about maybe like the editing process, because we already talked about, okay, how do you get started? What inspires you with your writing? Why don't we speak a little bit about editing, because that's incredibly important. You want to make sure you're proud of the work that you are releasing. And sometimes that takes looking over it 1 times to 15, depending on what it is. So do you guys have any tips on the editing process? Like, is there someone that you like to go to, or do you just self edit? Diane, I know you were talking about a writing coach
Yeah.
in past conversations. So can you speak a little bit on that?
Yes, I came across this writing coach. She was a former teacher of a friend of mine, but now she's a magazine editor. And I would not, generally speaking, unless it's something that I really feel like I've completely nailed, everything goes by her, because not only do I appreciate her editorial insights, she's also kind of like a buffer for, like, if when I read about pedagogy, it's from a really personal perspective. I'm talking about times that I failed and times that students are angry or whatever. So it's a very personal view. And because she was a professor, I feel like she's also not only helping me with my story, but making sure that I don't ever get fired for saying some of the things that I do.
Mhm.
So I recommend it highly. It's fantastic.
I'm
Be
sure,
happy
I'm
to
sure
share
that
that.
takes it to the next level when you have someone that you trust looking over
Absolutely.
your work. What about you, Tay? Do you go to someone for editing, or what's your?
I Yeah, like I get lucky and like I have, editors to actually look over my work, because sometimes you really miss like the grammar that I'm like so into writing, and then I'm like, oh no, I messed up on an I and you don't even see, and like the little things like semicolons or the comma's not supposed to go here. So thankfully like I have editors that I do work with, but I also use my network and, if people that you trust that we talked about, and just like sharing your work, and sometimes just like a couple of fresh eyes to look over something really does like help a lot with the editing process, because sometimes when you also read stuff out loud, it sounds different than when you're just like, writing it down. So I think that also helps a lot if you're going to self edit, just to read stuff out loud and see what it actually sounds like.
That's an excellent tip that I should try to do, because when you're reading something, it's already stuck in your mind, so you're probably filling in all the blanks. But if it's out loud, I'm sure you can catch more.
Mm-hmm.
Might be going on. That was an excellent tip. I definitely want to go to an editor myself. How did you guys? Well, Diane specifically, or you too, Tay, or anybody. How did you find the person that you trusted? Like, I guess for you, Tay, when you said the editors, was that just like the publications that you send your work to? Okay.
Yeah, there's just the publications, and also we have to actually, I'd work with them, so I would talk to them, and like we'd go over it together. Like even some of the writing that I do at my foundation right now, I work with, a colleague of mine who also happens to be, he also edits for the Chicago Tribune, which is really cool. So I could, say that I work with this fancy editor, but also just like, again, yeah, I think that's just like my editor process. I got lucky that way, that I didn't have to really find this editor.
Mhm. Network is
Yeah.
networking is important for sure, especially in a situation like that. You don't even have to pay anyone. It's literally in your own wheelhouse of people that you have. That's
Literally.
okay. Oh, yeah, I really like this question. I wanted to ask you guys, how do you think who you are as a person and as a woman has impacted your writing? And we could take a few seconds to think about it, because I know it's a pretty deep question, But I think since it's Women's History Month, it's important to think about it. Diane, would you like to go first?
Sure. I would say, see, Veronica down there in the chat says, yes, great question. So good job, Kira. I would say that my femaleness is not separate from anything that I do. It's always embedded in everything I do. And some of my topics are very often like topics about pedagogy. I write quite a bit about women in the classroom and women's experiences, and so that's always on my mind. I've been a feminist for as long as I could, I guess, say the word. But my piece coming up is about how do we bring men to the table? How can we call men into the conversation? Because they are that other half, or in this case, Raheel, who's joining us. he's our representative. Thank you so much.
That's important. They should be a part of the conversations of things like that. Tay or Amanda, do you have anything to add about how who you are as a person, as a woman, impacts your writing and your storytelling?
I think it does a lot. I like tend to write stuff that sometimes is just like I write about like woman leadership and if you have strong opinions on that. But I also try to, think about my writing from the perspective of a man and kind of see sometimes like if my like writing makes sense to someone, or the different perspective when you're reading something and you hear it from someone else, you're like, oh wow, it sounds different. But I would say 100% all my storytelling is pretty big of me being a woman, and that's being reflected into my writing, which you could tell by some of the topics that I do write about, that it has to do a lot about that.
Definitely. That makes so much sense because we are who we are and our experiences, and being a woman, it's something to be proud of. I'm the same way. Just as Diane said, I feel everything that I do stems from who I am as a woman, as a Black woman. And when I think about reading and writing, from as young as I can remember, I always loved books. I always loved writing. And I had an even deeper connection when I found like Maya Angelou and her poems and her books. And I can remember the first time that I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And I felt so seen. Like I never read a book and felt like, wow, somebody has had similar experiences as me. Someone actually can relate to me and feel the way I feel. Especially like growing up, I grew up in a more like predominantly white environment. So I felt really other a lot and very alone sometimes. I mean, I still had friends, but it's hard being somewhere where you're like the only one or one of few. And Maya Angelou actually had went through a very similar upbringing in her elementary school years. So I think when I write, it's very cathartic. Like I want to get out how I feel. And I also want to write for the people who feel like me and maybe they felt how I did before I read Maya Angelou. Like when you finally read something like, oh my gosh, this woman went through something similar that I did. So I also want to be able to share stories like that too.
I agree, Kira. When I write, I like to think about topics that I'm personally experienced or have seen as a woman of color, like you mentioned. So, for example, a lot of my work now is centered around public health. And for the last big project that I did that I was really proud of, it had to deal with how particularly underserved communities or Black women and Hispanic women experience a lot of comorbidities such as obesity, diabetes, or hypertension, and how that can lead to them having more complication or higher rates of complications during pregnancy and giving birth. And so learning about that and writing about this particular issue within these communities helped to give them a voice. I felt like helped to give me a voice as well, because I relate to that demographic. And then sending that as my project, and then presenting on that at my school, it felt really good to be able to give back to my community in that way, just to say that, okay, because that you're being seen, like we need to fix this issue, because as you know, Black women die at higher rates of of complications of death during childbirth. And so I really, really wanted to bring that issue to the forefront, and being able to do that felt really rewarding.
Wow, that's just a whole nother layer of how important it is to write and to communicate with people and to share messages, literally to the point of advocating for yourself and for others. Just like Diane said with the feminism, and now we're even talking about in the healthcare systems and for communities that might not get the platforms, like Tay was saying, wanting to speak from a brown girl perspective. So we have to do that. We have to use our voices and write and share our stories. Thank you all for those answers. Hmm. Next, I want to ask, what do you do when you get stuck with your writing, when you feel like, wow, I really do not know what to write. I want to write, but I have no ideas flowing. My hands are literally still. So what do you do when you are having writer's block, the dreaded writer's block? I'll go to Diane.
That's why I have a coach. You know, I did literally, there are times the first piece that I sent her, it was essentially like not done. And so I sent it to her and she goes, "You realize this has no conclusion, right?" But that's what she's there for. I pay her money to help me with these things.
I need to get a writing coach.
You do. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough.
I do. Tay or Amanda, what do you do when you have writer's block?
I kind of just walk away from the situation and then, take a little break and then come back to it when your mind's fresh again. And I think that's just the best way. Because sometimes, when you're stuck and you're kind of just like in a rut, you're just like, if you keep staring at it, nothing's going to happen. So I think the best thing is just to walk away, take a breather, come back, and it'll all start flowing again.
Yeah, I'm right there with Tay. I do the same exact thing. I just can't hold the stress inside me anymore. So I just got to get up and walk it off. And then I'll come back, relax, and then I can go back into flow.
That makes so much sense. I have to take a break too. I definitely have to take a break, do something fun or something relaxing. And something else that has helped me too is to watch something, because I'm very much a lover of film as well. And sometimes I'll just watch one of my favorite films because that really inspires me too. And that kind of will like kickstart my creative juices again as well.
Love that.
Well, I just think sometimes it's a luxury to be able to walk away, because I'm usually, if I'm working on something, it's not flowing. It's usually something that there's a deadline for. It's just the way it goes. So, and something that I do to keep myself accountable, particularly when there's payment involved, I usually just say, I'm going to have this to you by midweek. So that way it like gives me a clear, accountable time, but it also is a little soft. So midweek could be Wednesday or Tuesday evening.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's smart, Diane. Oh, I like where you were heading though with accountability, keeping
huge.
ourselves accountable. That I need to do better with that for sure.
Well, how could we help you as a community, Kira?
I think I need to start doing more deadlines and having an accountability partner. That's what I need. Yeah, no, Diane, I'm looking right at you. Wow, this session is healing.
This is news to me. Oh, it was only in planning this course that I realized that there's people who are called accountability partners, and that's what they do, is help you stay on course no matter what it is. Although I did have a friend who went to something called finishing school, and it was accountability. So, but it was just playing on the name of finishing school.
I just try to make myself wake up earlier and get if there's a deadline, especially, and if it's not coming to me at late at night, I'm like, it's fine. I'm just gonna wake up early, around 6 a.m. and just like finish it up, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Amanda, what about you? How do you make sure you're staying on top of your accountability?
That's a really good question. I also tend to procrastinate. And when I think once I'm like, okay, I really have no more wiggle room, that's when I'm like, okay, let me just sit down and get this done. I'll try and stay up late, but if it's to the point where I can't think anymore, then I will go to sleep because there's no point in me sitting there trying to come up with ideas when I can't. I'm like, just get some rest, sleep on it, wake up in the morning, like Taya said, early in the morning, and then try again. And yeah, that's how I do it. Other than that, what really helps is if I'm working with a team, then I know there's other people who are on the line aside from me, then I'm just like, okay, I got to get on top of things. Like, I can't just risk it all. If it's myself, then I'm like, all right, I'll be a little bit more lax.
I know what you mean, Amanda. The pressure of other people depending on you as well. I can't let my team down. I understand, but we have to do it for ourselves too, though. I can't let. Well, I'm really more so speaking for myself, Amanda. That's like, ooh, Kira, I can't let myself down. Make sure I stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, what inspires you to keep going? To keep going, especially with the individual plans that you have, where it's no boss that you know is going to have an attitude with you, or no raise that maybe you won't get. But for the personal projects that you are working on that you really want to complete, what inspires you to keep going?
Usually it's a passion, like I have something tied to it. Like with the project I mentioned earlier, I was like, I'm a woman of color and these health issues are concerning to this particular demographic. So this is what keeps me going, is knowing that I'm going to be helping this community. With the chapter that I co-authored with my late professor and the librarian who is also working with that class, it was knowing that I was a part of that class. We took third world development together. It really was like having no boss on the scene because the teacher was kind of like a fly on the wall. And and seeing how we as students were able to really take control of the situation and bring about a result that was really beautiful and informative, um, and learning how to enjoy the process instead of just the end result. So I think having some sort of like inkling or history with the topic really helps me feel that drive to continue. But like as Diane said, you don't always have sometimes you don't have the choice of the topic that you pick. You just have to kind of do it. And so um, in those situations, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, I could totally relate to what Amanda said. So when my passion for writing actually started when I was interning at MTV News, and while we were over there, we got to actually pitch topics and get our work published, which was awesome. And well, I like pitched a story about my friend who's this incredible artist who like paints in 3D, and I was like, MTV loves this kind of stuff, so I pitched him, and they were like, yes, Taba, write about him. That's awesome. So I interviewed him and I wrote about him. And once that piece got published, I started getting so much traction and just like crazy. Like my article was being translated in all these different languages. And I was like, wow, this is great. And one day my friend called me and he goes, Taba, like I have something to talk to you about. I go, what? And he goes, I'm gonna quit my full-time job and pursue art full time. And I was like, he's like, your art, this article is just giving me so many hits, and it really like it motivated me to actually pursue my passion. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that just my one article had all this power. So that's where I actually, fell in love with PR and kind of wanted to combine my love for writing and just like wanted to help people because I know that they say, PR people aren't doctors, but we still have the power to do incredible stuff. And that's what I'm getting to do at the foundation that I'm working at right now. And I get to write pieces about, things that are happening all over the world that you didn't even know that was happening. And it's just incredible how powerful that impact can be. And that's what I kind of, stem off of what Amanda said, that it's great, to combine that passion and seeing your work, really making a difference is incredible.
That's phenomenal, Tay. That I love the fact that you were able to highlight your friend in that way. And just as you said about using your writing to help people and realizing how powerful your writing is and your storytelling, that's so inspirational to me. And it sounds like I see in the chat people are saying that's awesome. Angela and Beverly saying great discussion. Thank you for sharing that story.
Of course.
I would say that on a completely shallow note, something that motivates me is I want to get to 100 published pieces. So over 60. And like when I have in my head, I mean, I do every once in a while I'll do something for LinkedIn. I mean, like, no, a legitimate source has actually purchased or agreed to publish my work. So that's a goal. And I keep on saying, I'm going to do it this year, but that would mean I want to get close to 100 this year. Even if I got to like, what would I consider close to 100? If I said, if I publish 90, could I say I have about 100 articles published?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you, Kira.
Diane, that's not shallow. That is a beautiful accomplishment. I don't know. I don't think that.
I'm aiming for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Number one, I feel like in my career thus far, it's been a lot of me supporting others, which is really wonderful. I love supporting others, but there's something really special about taking on that leader role and doing things my way, like with my book that I'm writing. It's about like a teenager who's going through grief and she's just trying to figure out what's going on with her. She's acting out and eventually leading to healing. And I thought of this book all on my own. It's something that I feel passionate about. It's a story that I want to tell that I won't hopefully will help others. And then as well with my YouTube, it's my first time where I call the shots. I'm deciding what content I want to publish. I'm reaching out to the people that I want to interview. And it's so empowering. It really is. And I think for my type of personality, I didn't even really think I would be in a space like that where I would feel comfortable owning something and doing it on my own. And now that I'm getting older, I'm just like, I can do whatever I want to do. I don't have to conform or ask for permission. If I have a goal in mind, if I have something that I really feel passionately about, I can pursue it. And however the chips fall, that's what it is. But I will know that I tried. So that's definitely something that motivates me with my writing. So does anyone, thanks, Amanda. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they would like to share? We would love to hear from you.
While you're thinking of that, I'll just.
This has been excellent. I love speaking to you ladies.
I'll put in the bit.ly link into the chat once again, and that's a place where you can get all the information about this class. There's recordings of past sessions as well as tip sheets that will be available to you. So you think, and I will write here.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Well, I think this has been absolutely phenomenal speaking with you all, hearing everyone's different experiences.
Oh, this is a good question. Oh. How you find the time?
That is a good question.
Oh, well, people say that I'm a bit of a workaholic. I don't know if I agree with that assessment, but yeah, I'm essentially working all the time, especially when it comes to writing. It feels like it takes forever. So.
Something that helps me, I have a planner. I don't know how I was living life without a planner before, but now I have a planner And I like to plan out at least 2 things, like 2 goals for that week that I really want to accomplish, like my top priority. And then on Sunday, usually I will find a time or multiple times, depending on what it is, to do that goal. So yeah, for me on Sunday, I like to plan my week ahead and I definitely schedule a time to write, highlight it, and I look at my planner every day and that really helps me to make the time to write.
I say my evenings for sure after work. You have your dinner and then, you're just like relaxing. So I just like to, be in my own space, sometimes on my own bed. And that's where I, start writing. And I just find that very relaxing. And, just getting all my creative juices flowing late at night. And then, yeah, that's how I kind of, stay on track and, meet my deadlines as well. And I also love to use my Outlook calendar to help me as well. So that's how I prioritize.
Great.
I use my Google Calendar. I sometimes do it at night as well. High pressure projects, though, I tend to wake up early in the morning, just do it like before work. I'll wake up at like 6 a.m., have my little tea, and then I'm like, okay, time to sit down and start writing something. And then 9 a.m. hits, and then I'm like, okay, time to go to work. But a good thing, something my uncle told me was like, if you care about something, you will always find the time. Like there's enough hours in the day to make it work. And at first I thought he was wrong, but he's not, he definitely isn't. I found time to do things when I thought I've had nothing at all. And it just all worked out. But it definitely takes pushing yourself a little.
And I think it's just start. Thank you for that, Amanda. You're right. You can make time and just starting. That's for me at least, that's the hardest part to just start. Even if you're staring at the screen for a little bit, just the action of being like, you know what, I'm gonna write right now. I think that's a great way to start getting into the habit of making time to write.
And then before you know it, you have 3 paragraphs done.
Yeah. Any more
So,
questions? All
okay.
right.
So will we like to wrap it up now? Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think
Okay. All right. So please help me thank my wonderful panelists, Kira, Tay, and Amanda. Yeah, it's very good. And I want to remind you that we have one more week to raise your voice. And next week is, oh, one moment, Laura. Well, next week is Make Yourself Famous because no one else will. And we will have a personal branding expert as well as a literary publicist. And now I'm going to say, yes, Laura, do you have a question?
Actually, that was hands clapping.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
Yes. Okay. And just the one free giveaway, if you feel like you would benefit from having another pair of eyes on your writing, I would certainly be willing to do it for 3 people if you just enter in your information into the share screen, the chat. I'll take a look for that. But other than that, thank you so much, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and everyone, and guest speakers. Thank you so much. Bye.